Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is the quality of the tefillin. Now, when I say quality of the tefillin, I don't mean how durable it is or how long it's going to last. I mean, how nice is the actual writing? What's the level, the quality of the writing? Now, this is very important because from the three components of the tefillin, the one that will affect the price the greatest will be the actual text, the writing of the parsha. And the reason for that is because it's the most labor intensive. It's the one that takes the most time. I mean, you could have two pairs of tefillin which are equal with the same bottom and the same ritzuos, the same straps, the same boxes, yet one could easily be $1,000 more. And the reason for that difference is because of what text is actually put inside the bottom. What level writing is it? How nice is it? Did the Sofer write slow and beautiful with all the detail that Shulchan Aruch requires, and therefore it took him quite some time, and he has to be compensated for his time, so it's a more expensive parsha? Or was it a parsha which was written quicker, and a lot of detail was left out, and because it was written quicker, it sells for less? It's a cheaper parsha, right? So it's a trade-off: how nice it is and how much it's going to cost. You can't have both. If it's beautiful, it's going to cost a lot because the Sofer took a longer time to write it. And if it's not as beautiful, it was written quicker, it's going to be a cheaper parsha. That's just the way it is. Now, in these levels of how nice it is, there are actually different categories where they will fall into. I like to categorize the writing into three categories. The first is b'diavad, which means minimally kosher. The next one is lechatchila, which means preferably, the way Shulchan Aruch says that it should be, preferably kosher. And then you have what's called Mehudar, and I'll explain what exactly Mehudar means in a moment. But these are terms which Shulchan Aruch defines, and you have to. One of the reasons why it's so important to make sure you know who you're buying your tefillin from is because you want to make sure that their definition of, minimally kosher and preferably kosher lines up with how Shulchan Aruch says, what minimally kosher and preferably kosher is. Because, I mean, I've seen these terms translated very, very, very loosely. When people say yes, it's 100% fine, and I see what they sold, and it's missing certain crowns and certain detail that the Shulchan Aruch says needs to be there. So I don't understand how that's perfectly fine and that's not considered minimally kosher. So you have to. It's one of the reasons why it's important to know where you're buying the tefillin from. You need to know what you're asking for, and they have to know what Shulchan Aruch says. The only way they could properly understand what you're asking for is if they themselves know what Shulchan Aruch says, and they could actually provide you with that. This is why I'm making this video. Now I will explain what exactly is I'll give you some ideas on how you could determine one level writing from another, but you have to make sure who you're buying them from knows what you're talking about. I mean, if you walk into a Judaica store, chances are they don't know what you're talking about when you say you want a beautiful tefillin, or they say tefillin's a tefillin. But there is a real difference, and hopefully through the course of this video I'll be able to explain that to you exactly what that is. So b'diavad, lechatchila, these are terms which Shulchan Aruch uses to describe the writing of the letters. But what is a Mehudar tefillin? How do you define Mehudar? So the term Mehudar, you don't actually find it in Shulchan Aruch that's something which is called Mehudar. But I want to read to you the first sif in Siman Lamed Vav of Shulchan Aruch, and I'll translate it also. And this is how I define Mehudar. Lechatchila tzarich lichtev ksiva tama ushlema, which means that by initial preference you need to write a script that is perfectly and faithfully follows Betunas ha'aisiyas, the shapes of the letters, shalamduha midivrei haTalmud, which are derived from the Talmud, umidrashim, and the Medrash, the Kabbalah miharishonim, and the oral tradition received from the sages of early generations. And then Shulchan Aruch goes on to say that if you deviate from those exact descriptions, it's not possible unless it totally loses the shape of the letters. So the way I define lichatchila, so technically speaking, if you have a lichatchila writing, if you're writing, the parsha that you're purchasing fulfills all the things that Shulchan Aruch says lichatchila should be there, from the Medrash, from the Gemara, from everything that Shulchan Aruch describes, that's considered Mehudar. That is Mehudar. Yet you will still find you could have a writing which is written with all of the detail that Shulchan Aruch needs to be there, but it's just not pleasing to the eye to look at. The letters are not symmetrical. It's not exactly lined up so beautiful. There's a lot of stretching in the letters, and I'll show you some of the things that you can look for to see, what's that next level up. Like a definition I make is there's Mehudar lahalacha, and then there's Mehudar like aesthetic beauty. Is this writing halachically muhudar, or is it aesthetically beautiful? Because that's the next level up. You have a writing which is b'diavad, which means it's minimally kosher. It's missing crowns, it's missing kaitzim, it's missing details that Shulchan Aruch says it needs to have. Then you have a writing which has all the detail, that's written properly. That's considered muhudar according to halacha. It's nice. I mean, it has everything it needs to have, but it may not be the most beautiful writing. And then you have writing which is more beautiful and more symmetrical and more just, when you look at it, it's like, oh my gosh, like somebody put their heart and soul into this. Because you could have, lechatchila, a nicer writing which is written quicker, and it's just, yes, it's 100%, but it's just not as beautiful. And when I show you the examples, you'll understand yourself exactly what I'm talking about. So again, just to recap, these three levels is b'diavad, which means it's minimally kosher, and yeah, I'll talk more about that in a second. And then lechatchila, which is how Shulchan Aruch defines how the letters should properly be written, which would also be technically considered muhudar. And then you have what's called beautiful. It's just written beautiful. Of course, it has everything Shulchan Aruch says it needs to have, and it's just the sofer took the time to write it slow, and he put all his effort into it and his kavanah into it, and you can see how the spacing of the letters is very equal, and the letters are symmetrical, and the letters are, everything's just more beautiful. And in that level of muhudar, after lechatchila, a higher level, there are so many different levels. You can just go up and up and up and up and up till it's so beautiful that it's gorgeous. And like I talked about in my introduction video for the tefillin, the nicer the parsha gets, typically speaking, the longer the line is going to be, for people that want to buy his Parshios, and of course the more it's going to cost. I do carry all kinds of Parshios. I try to stock them. I order them years in advance in order to have it. Somebody ordered a tefillin from me this week. He said the bar mitzvah was in May, and he wanted the top parsha, which typically takes a year. But lucky him, I don't have them in stock now, but I ordered these Parshios from the sofer already several months back, and I have another one ordered after this one, and I told him I'm going to have the parsha by Purim because he needs them after Passover, Pesach. I said, don't worry, we'll have it in time. And he was like, wow, how do you do that? Because I think ahead. So, that's just don't worry. So like I'm saying, it is, if you need something written beautiful and you want something nice, I probably have it for you in stock, or I will have it within the next month or 2 or 3 because I'm constantly ordering. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. Now I'm going to show you some of the samples of the actual writing, so you can see for yourself what exactly I'm talking about. Okay, so let's do it like this. Let's try to zoom in a little bit. I don't know how well it's going to be, how clear it's going to be. Okay, 1 second. Okay, so let's focus on the top parsha here. Believe it or not, this was actually inside of a pair of tefillin. Scares me to death that people could actually make a pair of tefillin like this. What do I have to say about this parsha? If that's supposed to be a chaf, okay? That's supposed to be a lamed. That's supposed to be a nun. Looks more like a vav. Okay. What do I see here? It's hard to look through the camera. I mean, oh look, that's supposed to be a mem, be'im. It's a samach. I mean, this is just so terribly written. Look at that aleph. When you buy a pair of tefillin on eBay and Amazon, this is what you're getting. For $320 or $250, this is what you're getting. It may not be this exact writing. It's going to be it's going to be another version of this. Oh, look at that. That's a daled. Well done. Yeah, okay. So that's why we don't buy tefillin on eBay and Amazon or anywhere, or gift shops and synagogues or things like that, because you understand that in order for a pair of tefillin to be kosher, it has to have the words that the Torah says it needs to have. Like I spoke about in the beginning of the video, in order for a tefillin to be kosher, it has to have the 4 sections of the Torah that mention the mitzvah of tefillin. And when you look at this parsha, it clearly does not have the sections of the Torah written there because you can't even read. It's not even legible. You can't read the letters. Not 8 out of 10 letters, you can't read them. They're not. It's not legible. Okay, the spacing is terrible. The letters, you just can't read them. So how is this wearing the words that from the parsha of the Torah that the Torah says you need to have and wear every single day in your hand? You're not wearing them because these are not words from the Torah. Okay, these are not the verses from the Torah. Now, the next level here, which I'm showing you right now, this is a typical tefillin which you will find in a Judaica store. And unfortunately, even by some sofrim who want to sell a lesser expensive option, a cheaper pair of tefillin, I know that tefillin is expensive, and I'm going to talk about that more at the end of the video, different ways to save money on the tefillin and different ideas that you can, hopefully take into consideration to help make the tefillin purchase more affordable. But the solution to having an affordable pair of tefillin is not to have a non-kosher pair of tefillin. Having a non-kosher pair of tefillin is not the solution. So if we're going to be wearing tefillin, we want to make sure that we're wearing tefillin which are 100% kosher, right? What do they say? They say 90 to 99% kosher is 100% puzzle. So just to now look at this over here. You can read the letters over here on this tefillin, on this parsha. You will notice that if you look throughout, it's missing the crowns in several of the places. Okay, so you'll see here, like you look, this nun is missing the crowns. It needs to have 3 crowns. But that's not a big deal. I said the term b'diavad before. B'diavad, if a parsha is missing the crowns, it would still be considered kosher. But what's going on in this tefillin is stuff more severe. Things like, oh, look, that nun is touching into that shin. I know I saw a really big problem on this parsha. This is one that somebody brought in a couple weeks ago. Where is it? Oh, here. Here it is. Okay, sorry. Look at this. You see this daled? You see, this is supposed to be Adam. This is supposed to be a daled also. Look at the way the sofer made the daleds. They don't have a proper akev which points out. Look at this one also. Another one, Adam here. It almost looks like a resh. This one looks like more like a daled. But this one looks almost complete. This one is basic. It's a kosher resh. So like one of the things when I open up a pair of tefillin, somebody gives me to check, and I start seeing letters. Like if I see a daled like this over here, I'll tell the person. I'll say, like, I know if I check this, I'm going to find a daled that's going to be a kosher resh, because the sofer was so not careful in how he wrote, or he wrote so fast that he just wasn't really careful, and one of them is going to be messed up really bad. Look, that one didn't. That one just blobbed right over. Okay. This one's not perfect either. I'll show you what a perfect daled is supposed to look like. But none of these are made properly. So that's like that kind of stuff. So yeah, it could have 99 dalads made right, but if one is made wrong, the whole tefillin is not kosher. It makes no difference. I saw another one here. Look at this. Getting a little bit of glare from the light over here. Look at this. The hay bumping into the yud. So that's a very, very thick connection. When you're buying a lesser expensive parsha, either a tefillin from a Judaica store or from a sofer who's charging a very, very low price for a pair of tefillin, this is what you're getting. There's I have a rabbi that I ask and he questions to, and he says that there's no such thing as a good deal on a pair of tefillin. You get what you pay for. So just keep that in mind. This could be okay for you. You could say like whatever. I have sometimes people they tell me I'm okay with an empty mezuzah case as long as I have the case on the door. I'm fine. I obviously can't agree with that, but I can't tell people what to do. If this is something that you're okay with, that it's mostly kosher, you're not holding yet to understand and appreciate what a kosher pair of tefillin is, then I don't have anything what to say. But if you want to do the tefillin properly and you want to have a properly written kosher tefillin, then things like letters not touching into each other, like over here, and things like letters being written improperly, that's what you're going to find in an inexpensive pair of tefillin. I have a video where I talk about buying tefillin. I think it was one of my first YouTube videos, buying tefillin on eBay and Amazon. And I show very clearly over there and I explain what's going on over there. And I'll put a link for that video in the description of this video. But don't kid yourself. When you're buying an inexpensive pair of tefillin, this is what you're getting. And if that's what you want, that's fine. But if that's not what you want, then you have to look to buy a pair of tefillin from a sofer, somebody who you know and you trust is going to give you a proper pair of tefillin. And it's going to cost a couple, it's going to cost money. But I'll talk more about this towards the end of the video. But a pair of tefillin is something that you buy once in your life, and it's proper to invest in it. Okay? So now let's go up to the next level of the tefillin. Okay, sorry. So you'll notice here that the parshas which I'm showing you in these videos are all Ksav Beis Yosef. I sell a lot of Beis Yosef tefillin, and I just figured I'm going to put this tefillin parsha on the board in order to show you what the tefillin are. So right here, what you're seeing here is my basic, what I call lechatchila. It's a beautiful pair of tefillin. This pair of tefillin right over here. It's lechatchila, 100%. Every detail, one of the things that Shulchan Aruch says lechatchila it needs to have is, like I think I might have mentioned earlier, but it's the crowns on top of the lamed. It needs to have the two crowns on top of the lamed. So you'll see here in the lameds they have the two crowns on top of the lamed. The right one higher than the left. The writing is written well. It could be spaced a little bit better, but it's a very, very nice writing. And this is 100% lechatchila, and it is Mehudar. Now, does that mean that there isn't anything nicer? No, of course there is nicer. But this is an example of something that's written 100% lechatchila. All the letters are written properly. If you look at the dalids, they are all very, very clearly defined. Let me see if I can point to you a dalid over here. Very, very clearly defined. Every single letter, the resh is a resh, the dalid is a dalid. None of the letters are touching. All of the letters have the crowns. It's a properly written pair of tefillin. This is called a nice Mehudar pair of tefillin. Okay? Now, let me show you something that would be considered a little bit nicer. Something a little bit, what I'll call a little bit more Mehudar. Not because it has more detail that Shulchan Aruch says it needs to have. It's more Mehudar because the actual writing is just, it's nicer, it's more beautiful. Now look at the next parsha here. Let's make myself a little bit of room. So this is a parsha which is one level up. Okay, this is I think on my website I have it as Mehudar number 2. I think this one was number 3. This one's number 3, I think, and this one's number 2. This is already a more beautiful parsha. The spacing of the letters, the actual letters themselves are more consistent one to the next. It's just more nicely. It's nicer. It's more nicely written. Okay, so again, every detail that it needs to have is there. It's just a nicer, more beautiful written, parsha. The sofer has a couple years. He actually does have a couple more years experience, and he just has a more beautiful writing. So again, that's a parsha which is more beautiful. And then now I'll show you another parsha which is even nicer than this one, which I consider number 1 on my website, which is written by a very, 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 very fine sofer, very chashuv sofer. Let me make a little bit of room over here. I'll move the board just so you can get an idea of something that will be even nicer. So what makes this one that much nicer is you can almost, if you look at the letters, they are so much more consistent, and they're just, the proper way to write a beautiful parsha is that each letter should almost be a symmetrical box. So like if you look at this bays, for example, the space in between the top and the bottom the white is almost just as perfect as the black on the top and the bottom. This just adds to the beauty of the actual writing. Okay, so it's like what we call 3 by 3. The letter, or the tip of a feather is called a kummas, so it's 3 kummas in wide, 3 kummas in tall, and 3 kummas wide. Look at this chaf. It's exactly three widths of a feather tip wide and 3 high. The resh also. It's a very consistent and a very, very beautiful ksav. And I know if what I'm explaining to you right now seems like I'm splitting hairs, then you're right. I am splitting hairs, because these are both really, the truth is all 3 of them are really beautiful writing. So one other thing I just want to point out before I go on to talking further about the Tefillin Parshios is that between these two level Parshios over here, the least expensive one that I sell over here, and the one which you'll find in a Judaica store, you will find sometimes, even if this parsha wasn't puzzled outright, because of the letters misshapen and the letters touching, like I showed you over there. The way this is written very poorly. I mentioned that it's missing the crowns over there, which would only make it minimally kosher. But there's other aspects of this that if you look at, you'll see, like for example, this lamed with a very short head. That is also a very serious concern. If you look at the way the crowns are made, they're made like we call the pitchfork tagim. Look like the sticks. They don't have the bollies that the tagim are required to have on the top of each one of the crowns. It doesn't have the bollies on it. It's just the sticks. So that's another thing, a shortcut that the sofer took in order to make the tefillin writing faster. He didn't put the balls on top of the tagim. And this is something which is brought down in Shulchan Aruch, why it needs to be so. Not to go into it right now, but what I'm trying to bring out over here is, writing fast has its consequences. Writing fast and taking shortcuts will leave you with a tefillin which is at best minimally kosher, at worst outright puzzle. Okay? So I can go on and on and on, explain to you different details which are left out and things and how the quality of the writing is compromised, but I think that you get the point. So I hope that by me showing you the different writings and levels of the writing, or quality as we called it, it gave you a better understanding of what I'm talking about when I say, minimally kosher, better kosher, and more beautiful and less beautiful. So again, if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe. If you like this video, give the video a thumbs up, and I'll see you on my next video. Another video coming out real soon, and stay tuned.